that's what this whole concept of master storytelling is about. This is how we connect as people, as a
Right.
species. It's the stories we tell that we go. When I said to you, yeah, I lived in Arizona for 7 years. All of a sudden, you're like, wait, no way, and we all of a sudden had this instant bond that we had this thing in common. That
Right.
that's what happens, and that's what we do as a species that connects us to each other.
Cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you walk and your talk is constant.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I guess what like is popping into my head right now, just as you say it, like all of this is just blowing my mind. So for anyone listening, rewind and re-listen to that again. Because for a couple things, right? Like sometimes we have strong hunches about things, but we don't necessarily have the numbers to back it up. Some people are really good at being lying or convincing or whatever you want to call it, their point. But I mean, I think that's great. Like storytelling does deliver that credibility, and maybe something we feel very strongly about, but maybe there isn't numbers yet to describe that. And I think that's huge. Man, I really love your point about people acting like the position and not the person. Because I mean, I'm just thinking like you walk into some corporate environment, like if you say, how was your week? Well, at 6 o'clock I woke up and 7 o'clock I had breakfast. Nobody does that, right? You tell about like all the cool crap you did that weekend, or relaxing, or whatever it is you do. Like, and then there's like a switch that happens, and they go into like CEO mode or like CMO mode or middle manager mode, and then all of a sudden it's like sucks all the life out of it, and that makes total sense of why that happens.
Well, and think about why that happens. What do we teach people as they go into leadership positions? Do we teach them how to tell stories effectively? No, we teach them how to run their spreadsheets and manage their budget and goal setting and holding people accountable. And we teach them all this process stuff. So what do leaders then lean back on, particularly in difficult moments? They lean back on process, but they don't lean on the humanity that is required for us to really be leaders. And storytelling is one of the ways, if you're doing it intentionally, to lead like a person, not a position. It's going to help us lead like a person. And then I think you've probably heard this phrase before. I've heard it for so many years. But people don't leave jobs, they leave. I'll let you finish it. They leave their managers.
Yep.
But they don't leave their managers. They stay with their managers who have that level of humanity with them, who can make that connection and lead as a person instead of as a position.
Man, I love that. The other thing I'm kind of curious about, at the tail end of what you were talking about before, you were talking about like the credibility and stuff like that of a story. I'd be curious, what are your thoughts on like, do you think it's more credible because it allows people to draw their own conclusion? Or, you know what I mean? Because like I feel like there's that, like when when you're talking to like a kid, for example, like, and you tell them to do something, they'll like, sometimes you get that like instant pushback. Sometimes you got to convince them to do something, right? So do you feel like that's kind of like the adult corporate version of that? Like a story is like a way to get someone to draw their own conclusion, and then that's why you get that buy-in? Like, what do you think is happening in that situation?
Effective storytelling allows for choice.
Okay.
You can tell a story and then you can say the moral of this story is, or what I want you to take away from this is. That's not going to have as strong an impact if you tell the story, and again, doing it intentionally so it leads to that point, that people can come to that point themselves. And choice is the foundation for motivation. If people are saying, yes, I choose to do that because of what I learned from that story, they're going to be much more motivated, much more committed to it than if you say, so this is what you need to do at the end of it.
Right. So just to make this super practical, because I'm finding this very fascinating. I really am. And maybe it's just due to like your ability as a storyteller, as someone who's done this for a really, really long time. So I'd love to get your insight on this. Like you were talking about how you don't want to like basically tell someone what to do after you've led them to a certain choice. So like, how do you navigate that? Like, how do you leave it like open-ended so there's like a little bit of a cliffhanger at the end, but not so ambiguous that it feels like there's no call to action at all? You know what I mean? And I'd imagine like in a like in my head, like I could see a manager meeting where like afterwards you pull, you know, and do a one-on-one and say, hey, like, you know, what did you get out of the story? And then you can kind of unpack it together. But let's just take it maybe from like a more general, like I posted a video and it's got a little cliffhanger thing that makes people want to like, you know, like a lead gen for a company, right? It's got to like lead them into a decision. How do you navigate that? Like, how do you work through that? I don't know if I'm asking the question right, but.
Well, I'll answer what question I heard, and then you tell me if I'm answering the right question.
Fair.
I see really two sides of that, Stephen. If I'm doing this in person, you talked about with a team, you know, a manager holding a meeting with his people. At the end, you can ask the question, so what are you going to do with this information? Based on what we just talked about, what actions are you going to take? And then if they say something that's a little bit off, you can say, okay, why? Why are you going to go that direction? And but it breeds the discussion and it breeds the thinking.
Yeah.
If it's something where you don't have that direct connection, where you're trying to generate leads, then you put that question at the end. You want to learn more about this, or you want to learn more about how to do this, click here.
Yeah.
Give them a path to take, but a path to take that's satisfying their curiosity, that's satisfying their need to know. The human brain craves understanding. We're always asking why. Why is that happening? How does that impact me? And that's why story is so impactful, because it helps people make that connection to why that's important to them. And it gives them, if we can give them a path forward, then we do get action at the end of that story.
Man, I love that. I'm going to be listening to this podcast again. This is good stuff, man. No, it's great. I love it. Apparently I'm amateur storyteller because this is blowing my mind. So I appreciate your perspective. If someone wants to get a hold of you, they want to dig into more of this information, where can people find you? Where would you like people to reach out to you at?
Two places. One, our website, which is master-storytelling.com. You have to have that little dash between master and storytelling. But if you go master-storytelling.com, that will get you to us. We've got some free resources there. I will likely have this podcast posted up there after it comes out. I have a bunch of other free resources for people. You can also check out our Master Storytelling Workshop and some other resources that we have about how to get better at being intentional about your stories. The other thing is to follow me on LinkedIn. Look for Mark Carpenter, or you can look for Mark Carpenter Master Storytelling, and it will get you right to me, because that's where I've got my handles out there on LinkedIn. I share things regularly on LinkedIn. I try to put at least one story out a week that has some kind of point to it to teach, lead, sell, and inspire, so that you can get the idea of what does it sound like to actually do this in practice. Would love to connect with everyone. I'm just geeky enough about this stuff that I'll talk about it to anybody, anytime, anyplace.
Love it. Awesome, man. Thank you so much for sharing. Thank you for being on the show. And thank you for sharing your insight. It's certainly been insightful for me, and I no doubt it is insightful for many others. So thank you very much.
Thanks to you, Stephen.
Cause no problems. I just wanna live my life, but I keep on hearing about nonsense. Me and my dons ain't mobsters, but you know when you see imposters, we know how to read them faces, same way you know how to read them comments. If you wanna talk, let's talk, but around here, make sure you're walking your talk is constant.